My daughter is gone. My son-in-law is gone. And the only person left sitting across from me at the kitchen table every night is my wife, who can barely look at me anymore. We did this. I need to say that out loud because I spent 8 months convincing myself we didn't. That we were just trying to keep the peace. That we were being reasonable. That any parent would have done the same. No, we chose, and we chose wrong. I should back up. My son-in-law, I'll call him that, because even after everything, that's still how I think of him, came into our family 14 years ago. He was 24 when my daughter brought him home for the first time. Quiet guy. The kind of quiet that takes a while to understand. He was an electrician, ran his own small crew. Didn't say much at dinner but always did the dishes after without being asked. My wife thought he was boring. I thought he was solid. I was right about that part at least. They got married in Kelowna, out in the Okanagan, in the summer. Small wedding. About 60 people. My daughter wore her grandmother's ring on her right hand and cried through her vows. He didn't cry. But his jaw was tight the whole time and I could see his hands shaking. He loved her. Anyone in that room could see it. They built a good life. He worked. She worked. She's in healthcare administration. Manages a regional team, never stops moving. They bought a house in Airdrie, just outside Calgary, right before prices went through the roof. They had 2 kids. My grandchildren are 7 and 4 now. My granddaughter calls me Papa, and my grandson still sometimes mispronounces my name. And it comes out sounding like a sound a seal makes. I used to hear that every weekend. I don't hear it anymore. My son has been the problem in my life, for as long as I can remember, and I say that with every kind of grief a father can carry. He's 31. He's always been the one I worried about. Not because he was bad, not when he was young. When he was young he was sweet and funny, and could charm anyone in a room. The problem is he never stopped believing that charm was enough. He didn't finish college, bounced through jobs. Borrowed money and paid it back later, not at all. Not large amounts, never anything that broke us, but enough that we got used to covering gaps. My wife's relationship with him is different from mine. I don't have a clinical word for it. She just loves him in a way that doesn't leave room for consequences. When he was little and broke something, she would clean it up before I got home, so he wouldn't get in trouble. When he was a teenager and got caught cheating on an exam, she wrote an email to the school explaining he'd been under stress. When he was 25 and got a DUI, she called her brother who knew someone and got him a referral to a lawyer who got it reduced. She never thought she was doing anything wrong. She thought she was being his mother. He moved to Edmonton a few years back, which was probably good for everyone. Got a job at a logistics company. Was doing okay as far as we knew. Called more than he visited. That was normal for him. I don't know exactly when it started. I don't think I ever will, and honestly I've stopped trying to figure it out. Because the timeline doesn't change what happened. What I know is this. My son spent a lot of time in Calgary last year, supposedly for work. He said his company had expanded there. That he was managing some new contracts. That he'd be in the city every second week or so. My daughter knew he was in town. She'd have him for dinner sometimes. She told me once that it was actually nice having him around more. That he and her husband seemed to be getting along better than they ever had. That sentence lives in my head now. My son-in-law called me on a Thursday afternoon in November. I was in the garage, replacing a part on the snowblower before winter really hit. He didn't say hello. He said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear all of it before you say anything." I put the snowblower part down. He told me he'd come home early from a job 2 weeks before. The crew had finished ahead of schedule. He was supposed to be gone until evening, and he came back at 2:30 in the afternoon, to an empty house. Except, it wasn't empty. His truck was quiet enough on the street, that they didn't hear him pull in. He walked in through the side door. He didn't tell me every detail. He didn't need to. He found my son in his house. The silence on the phone. After he said it was the worst sound I've ever heard. He told me he left, got back in his truck, drove around for 2 hours, picked up the kids from school, took them to a drive-thru, put them to bed. He didn't say a word to my daughter that night. He said he needed to think. He said he'd been carrying it for 2 weeks. Going to work. Coming home, looking at Tira across the dinner table. Watching my son's name light up on her phone. He told me he wasn't calling to ask for anything. He wasn't calling to blow things up or get us involved. He said he was calling because he thought we deserved to know. Before he did what he was going to do next. He was filing for separation. He'd already seen a lawyer. He was keeping the house. His name was on the mortgage, hers wasn't. It was complicated but his lawyer felt good about it. He'd already spoken to a family mediator about the kids. And then he is thing I still hear when I'm trying to sleep, he said. I just want you to know that none of this changes how I feel about you too. But I think you should decide carefully what role you want to play and what comes next. Because I'm paying attention. He didn't say it as a threat. That's the thing. He said it like a man reading out a set of facts. I thanked him for calling. I didn't know what else to say. I told him I was sorry. He said he knew, and then he hung up. I sat in the garage for 45 minutes before I went inside. My wife's first question, before I'd even finished telling her, was whether we should call my daughter first, or my son first. I said I didn't think we should call either of them right away. That we needed to think. She said we couldn't just do nothing. I said I didn't know what to do. She said she was going to call my daughter. She called her while I was still standing in the kitchen. I only heard one side of it. My wife crying. My wife saying it was going to be okay. My wife saying that these things were complicated. That marriages went through terrible things, and some of them came through the other side. I heard her say, "He loves you though. He loves you, we can see that." I went to bed before she came off the phone. The next week was the worst week of my marriage. Not because of what my daughter did, though that was its own wound, but because of what my wife and I couldn't agree on. I wanted to stay out of it. I said that clearly, more than once. I said that the only person who hadn't done anything wrong in this situation was my son-in-law. And that the most we could do was not make things worse for him. My wife said she understood that, but that our daughter was our daughter. I said that didn't make what she did okay. She said she knew that. I said, so then what are we doing? She didn't answer. My son called 2 days after I found out. He'd clearly been talking to my daughter, because he already knew that I knew. He didn't apologize, not really. He said something about things being complicated, about feelings he hadn't expected, about not meaning for any of it to happen. I asked him how long. He said a few months. I asked him where. He said usually a hotel downtown. I asked him if he understood what he'd done to this family. He got quiet and said he knew, and that he was sorry, and that he hoped we could get through it. I told him I needed some time, and I hung up. My wife had a different conversation with him. I know this because she told me, and because I found out later there were calls she didn't mention. She told him she wasn't going to abandon him. She told him she understood he was going through something. She told him the most important thing right now was for the family to stay together. The family. As if it was still a single thing that could be kept together. She also called my son-in-law. I didn't know she was going to do it. She called him and told him she hoped he and my daughter could work through it. She said the children needed both their parents. She said she hoped he could find it in his heart to consider counseling before making any final decisions. He was polite. He thanked her for calling. And then, 3 days later he called me. He wasn't angry, he was something else. Resigned maybe. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He said he was glad I hadn't asked him to reconsider, because he didn't think he could stomach that. He said he understood my wife meant well. He said he hoped we understood that he had to do what was right for himself and his kids. I told him I did understand. I told him that for what it was worth, I thought he was right. He thanked me. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. He said, "I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what your relationship with your son looks like going forward yet, and that's your business. But I need you to know that if I ever see him near my children, or if I find out he's been around them without my knowledge, I will pursue every legal option I have. I need you to respect that boundary." I told him I respected it completely. He thanked me again. He asked me how the snow was in Airdrie this year. I told him it had come early. He said it had in Calgary too, and then we said goodbye. That was the last real conversation I had with him for a long time. My wife's position hardened over the following weeks in a way I didn't anticipate. She started framing it differently. Started talking about how my daughter had made a mistake, but didn't deserve to lose her marriage over it. Started pointing out that my son-in-law was being rigid. Started saying that the kids needed stability, and that a divorce was going to damage them more than working through a difficult period would. I told her that wasn't our decision to make. She said she wasn't trying to make it for them. She just thought we had a responsibility to try. I asked her what exactly she thought we should be doing. She said she thought we should host Christmas. Have everyone together, show that the family wasn't broken. I told her that the family was in fact broken. We had the worst fight of our 35-year marriage at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning in December. I don't remember every word of it. I remember telling her that I loved my son, but what he did was wrong, and we couldn't fix it by pretending it wasn't. I remember her saying that nobody was pretending. I remember saying that inviting both of them to Christmas dinner was pretending. I remember her crying and saying she just wanted her family together. And I remember, to my shame, that I backed down. I told myself I was being compassionate. I told myself that it was one Christmas. That it wasn't an endorsement of anything. That we could be present for everyone without it meaning something. I believed that. Or I made myself believe it. We told my son-in-law that we were hosting Christmas, and that we hoped he would come. He was quiet on the phone for a moment, and then he said he had plans already. He said the kids would be with my daughter this year, and with him for New Year's. He said it politely. He said he hoped we had a good holiday. I don't know if he knew my son would be there. I suspect he knew. Christmas was not good. My son was in the house with my daughter and the grandchildren, and there was a performance of normalcy that exhausted everyone. My wife cooked for 3 days. We opened presents. The kids were happy. Or, they seemed to be. Because they're children and they don't fully understand yet what's happening. My son hugged my daughter in the kitchen, and I had to go outside and stand in the cold for a few minutes. My son-in-law found out my son had been there. I don't know how, someone told him, or my daughter mentioned it without thinking. He didn't call me. He texted. It said simply, "I hope you all had a good Christmas." That was it, no accusation, no anger, just those 7 words. I wrote back and said I was sorry. He didn't respond. The separation proceedings moved through the spring. My son-in-law's lawyer was good. The house question was resolved in his favor. His name was on the mortgage and title. And, because they'd bought before the market went up, the equity was significant. My daughter got a fair spousal arrangement, given her income level, and they worked out a parenting schedule that kept things stable for the kids. It was handled, as far as divorces go, with more grace than it deserved. My daughter moved into a rental in the northeast end of Calgary. My son eventually went back to Edmonton. The thing between them, whatever it was, dissolved quietly. My daughter mentioned once, in a tone that was trying to be casual, that she and my son weren't really in contact anymore. I didn't say anything. My wife and I saw the kids on our scheduled weekends, which my son-in-law had agreed to keep consistent. He dropped them off, waited in the driveway, exchanged whatever logistics needed exchanging. We didn't have long conversations when I tried once, standing on the front step in March, to tell him again how sorry I was. He said he knew. And he said he bore us no ill will, and he got in his truck and left. It was the most devastating thing anyone has ever said to me without anger. My daughter is struggling. I don't want to be unkind about it. But the truth is the truth. She is relearning who she is outside of a life she spent 13 years building. And she isn't doing it well. She's renting a 1-bedroom that the kids share on her weeks. She goes out with friends on weekends. She calls my wife more than she calls me. She doesn't talk about my son-in-law much. But when she does, the way she talks about him, with a kind of flat practice distance, makes me think she understands, somewhere underneath it, what she threw away. She doesn't say that. But I can hear it. My son is by all accounts fine. That's the word my wife uses. Fine. He's back in Edmonton, back at his job. Went on a few dates apparently. My wife reports this to me at dinner sometimes as though it's good news, and I've had stops to myself, more than once, from asking her what she thought made it good. The thing I can't stop thinking about is this. My son-in-law didn't need us to take his side. He didn't ask for that. He told us, right at the beginning, to decide carefully what role we wanted to play. He gave us a warning that we didn't understand was a warning, and we walked right past it, and did what was comfortable. Which was pretend we could stand in the middle of something that didn't have a middle. There is no middle when one person burns the house down. You're either helping them rebuild, or you're picking through the rubble with them. We picked through the rubble, and the man who didn't start the fire looked at us standing there, covered in ash. And he made his decision about who we were. My wife and I don't fight about it anymore. We don't really talk about it. There's a version of our marriage now that is quieter than it used to be, and I don't know yet whether that's grief or damage. I think maybe there isn't much difference. The grandkids come every second Saturday. They're good kids. They're going to be okay, I believe that. My granddaughter told me last month that her dad got a new couch, and she helped pick the color. She was so proud. I told her it sounded perfect. I meant it. My son-in-law and I don't call each other anymore. I don't expect we will. He is unfailingly civil in the driveway, and I understand now that civility is the ceiling of what we'll ever have again. I used to think that was salvageable. I don't think that anymore. What I know now, after a year of living inside the consequences of what we did, is that we were not neutral. We thought we were neutral. We hosted Christmas, and we answered my daughter's calls at midnight. And we spoke carefully about everyone's feelings as though they were all equally valid, and we thought that was fairness. It wasn't. It was cowardice with better manners. A man came to us and told us the truth. He didn't ask us to punish anyone. He just asked us to see clearly. And we looked at what was in front of us, and we blinked. We blinked because it was easier. We blinked because it was our son and our daughter and it was Christmas. We blinked because my wife couldn't hold the weight of my son's pain without trying to do something about it. And I didn't love her enough in that moment to tell her that sometimes, most loving is to let people feel the weight of what they've done. The good man is still in this story, somewhere on the other side of a driveway that used to be ours to walk up to freely. He is raising two kids with patience and consistency, and a new couch and a color his daughter helped choose. He is doing all of that without us. We made sure of that. And now we sit with what we chose, in a house that feels 3 sizes too large, at a table that used to have more people around it. This is what protecting the wrong person costs. Not all at once. Quietly, over months, like water under ice. Until one morning, you realize the ground beneath you has been gone for a long time and you've just been too afraid to look down.